And now it's boisterous. And then maybe this is more feminine, maybe sort of, I'm imagining someone who looks like a flapper in a silent movie, a woman, a delicate looking sort of woman comes along. Boisterous. Here comes the woman again. And so on and so on. Hello and welcome to the Heart of the Piano YouTube channel. I'm Bob Rose. Welcome to this tutorial on the Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. Not only is this a very popular, very famous piece of music, it's also part of the ABRSM 2025-2026 syllabus. So I'm sure it's going to be very, very popular. I'm just going to be completely honest right off the bat. This is not one of my favorite pieces. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be playing it, and it doesn't mean that there aren't things to love about it. Anyone who knows me from like my podcast and has listened to some of my other stuff knows that one of my primary things that I try to teach people is that no matter what you're playing, no matter how much you think you already love it or don't love it, always look for what there is to love in it. And this piece of music is very lovable. It's just not my personal taste, but that doesn't mean that I can't find what there is to love about it. This means that I think it has some weaknesses. So to me, it's not the most in-depth, most deep piece of music. It's quite superficial in many ways, but that's fine. That's kind of part of its charm. I think part of maybe what there is that I don't like about it is that there's so many people can just churn this out. And this is in some ways one of its strengths for people learning the piano, which is that you really just have to kind of play the notes. As long as you can play the notes reasonably accurately and reasonably in time without your timing wobbling about all over the place, you can't fail. You can't fail but to get a good mark for this piece. I was actually thinking to myself, what's my worst case scenario? What's the way in which someone could play this in the worst possible way, but still, with all the correct rhythms, with all the correct notes, what's the worst way that someone could play this? And I was thinking, well, really, if you were just reading the notes, you were reading the right hand in quite a legato way, because in my opinion, it needs to be light and frothy, which means that it all needs to sound good. It needs to sound quite staccato. And by the way, it's been months since I recorded this, and there is a recording that I put up on YouTube. The link will be above and in the description below. But basically, to me, this is kind of what it should sound like. Frothy, light. So notice the right hand. It's got this kind of staccato element to it. So I was thinking, well, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst way that someone could play it? Now, if you're not good with your staccato, and I'm going to talk in a minute about how to do this staccato, because it's a little bit challenging, but if you can't do the wrist staccato, if you can't play it staccato, then what you're going to end up playing is something like which is not staccato at all. So if you go, and if it's not very rhythmic, so rather than now, if you watched one of my recent YouTube videos where I talk about the difference between conducting like I can do exactly the same speed, but like one's lazy and the other one's really tight. So a worst case scenario is kind of quite lazy rhythm with the right hand all legato. So like that to me is like a worst case scenario, as opposed to what I imagine, which is like and then I went and listened to the original official ABRSM recording. This is the official ABRSM recording that's on Spotify and YouTube and loads of other places. And oh my God, that's exactly how the official version goes. As far as I'm concerned, it couldn't be any worse, unless you literally played it out of time and with the wrong notes. The official version is like, which is just not how it goes. It needs the staccato, frothy. So, step number 1 is do not play like the official recording, please, because it's so dull. I can't tell you how much I do not enjoy that playing. Now, just to back this up, I've got the official teaching notes. These are the official 2025-2026 teaching notes. And in the foreword by Mervyn Cousins on behalf of the ABRSM Chief Examiner Group, because a lot of people, I think, just don't really believe this. But he says in page, in Roman numerals 4, in the foreword, it is important to say that there is no ABRSM way to play these or any other musical works. So, in other words, just because it's played like this in the official recording does not mean that is the ABRSM way of playing it. So please just throw it out the window. Do not play it like that. Now, basically, a few weeks ago, because I knew that I was going to record a tutorial for this Maple Leaf Rag, and by the way, please do, if you want to know about more tutorials, I'm planning on doing as many tutorials as I can for every single piece in the 2025-2026 syllabus. How many of them I get around to doing, I don't know. My plan is to do all of them, but I get really bored of them. So we'll see how it goes. And, to support me, if you want to see these, then, click on like, click on subscribe and, all that good stuff, and leave comments to let me know that you want these, because they are kind of, hard work for me. I'm not super excited about them, but I know that people want to see them. I know that they're going to be useful. So I spoke in a recent video about wrist staccato. And so this is staccato, where you play, instead of, which is all legato, I spring from my wrist. Same with left hand. Now, in the official ABRSM video, the pianist, she makes the left hand incredibly staccato. Like, I think it's the other way around. I think it's the right hand that's the most staccato. The left hand is staccato-ish. But not too staccato. It's not like... And, I'll be honest as well, when I was recording this and when I play this, I don't really think a lot about these things. It's sort of more what some people call vernacular. It's sort of more it's almost like popular music. And when I play this, I don't really think about any of this. I just think of the sound and I just play it. But knowing that I was going to make a tutorial about this and coming back and, getting it a little bit under my fingers, I started thinking, well, what am I doing? And so I'm going to break down for you some of the things that I was doing intuitively without really thinking about it. Now, what I do, it's generally staccato, but I use dabs of pedal. I use quite a lot of dabs of pedal. And I think particularly when you have something, an important note on the beat, for example, bar 1, you've got an A flat left hand, you've got the tonic on the beat. That's quite important. So I don't want to hear... And what I realized is when there are important notes on the beat, I tend not to play those staccato. Now, do not take these as rules. These are guidelines. Try them. Do not use these as rules. So basically, pedal, pedal. Now, you'll notice that in the right hand, there's a lot of syncopation. So if you don't know what syncopation means, this is when you have notes off the beat. So you've got, this note is off the beat. This E flat octave, not on the beat. Off the beat. Off the beat. So this doesn't need to be that staccato. I don't think it needs to go. It can be. And also, anything that is marked longer than the semiquaver, don't play that staccato either. So, I mean, just use this with a grain of salt. Don't take these as rules. But what I'm realizing is that when there's important notes on the beat, sometimes I use a dab of pedal, I lean into it, and then everything else staccato, unless it's something that is marked longer than the semiquaver in the right hand. Like that. I lean into that, I don't play staccato. And also, whenever there are important left-hand notes, when there's not much going on in the right hand, so there, I lean into that in the left hand. Maybe not so much there in the left hand because you've got stuff going on in the right hand, so. But here, nothing going on in the right hand. Now, subtly, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to hit people over the head with it. This is hitting people over the head. That's too much. But, you know, I just quite like the coming back, so. And. Now, something that I think is really helpful to be aware of in this piece of music. In other videos, I talk about the importance of tension and release. Now, in this particular piece of music, it's quite unusual for me to think perhaps tension and release is not the most helpful way of thinking about it. So for me, what you have is sort of more like light and darkness. And I think it's really important to be aware of light and darkness. So when a lot of people talk about major and they say that major is happy and minor is sad, I think it's much more helpful, and a lot of people describe it more that major can be lighter, brighter. It's got more light, and minor can be darker. So the beginning, it's major. It's generally quite light. Light as in it has a lot of light from the sky, you know, sunshine. It's quite sunshiny. And then dark. It's like a dark thundercloud suddenly went over. Dark. And now it's gone really dark. It's like, I don't know how many of you have ever experienced a solar eclipse. And when the moon goes over the sun and suddenly everything goes dark, suddenly all the birds stop chirping and everything goes quiet and it's very ominous and gloomy. It's a little bit like that. And suddenly the sun's gone in. And then the sun starts to come back out. And the sun's back out. The rainbow comes out. Bit dark. These diminished chords are a little bit of darkness. But then the sun is out. So that's how I like to think of it. It's like the dramatic tension between bright and dark. And I like this dark being quite quiet. And do not rush through it. Don't rush that section. It's not because it's one of the easiest bars to play. You don't want to play like which I think a lot of people will tend to do because it's just physically, technically easier. No, you want to hold it back because it's dark. And it makes so much more sense when you think of it in terms of brightness and darkness. And here it's just still raining a bit. And the sun's coming out like an April shower, you know, that kind of thing, if you're in the UK. So, yeah, anyway. So one of the most important things, it says tempo di marcia, march tempo. This metronome marking is only a suggestion. This isn't what Scott Joplin wrote. Now, one of the things you should probably be the most aware of is sort of like, I think, what I would call the Scott Joplin police. So in the same way that you've got like the Bach police, who you're afraid will come and arrest you if you play Bach on the piano and you put pedal in, or you start playing very romantically and the Bach police are going to come and get you. The Scott Joplin police will come and get you if you play this fast. Now, personally, I think it's fine to play Scott Joplin quickly, just because he very famously said that he did not want his pieces played too fast. Well, in my opinion, once a composer has finished composing a piece and it's out in the world, it takes on a life of its own. But be aware that Scott Joplin did very famously say that he did not want his pieces played particularly quickly, and he thought everyone played it too quickly. And so everyone will basically nag you, oh, that's too fast, that's too fast. They're like the Scott Joplin police. Now, personally, I think it's fine if you want to play it quickly. Let's see how quickly I can play it. It's not under my fingers, but... etc., etc. Now, if you play like that, I think it's fairly certain that some people will come running out of the woodwork and go, that's too fast. Scott Joplin said you must never play it that fast. And as far as I'm concerned, play it however you want, as long as it doesn't sound like you're rushing it. So it's got to have a really, really steady tempo. And I like to think that the way I played it just then had a very steady tempo. So rather than... which just doesn't feel that steady. I think it's the feeling of steadiness that's more important than don't play it too fast. But also, if you play it fast, be prepared that an examiner may write down, maybe that was a little fast for Joplin, because maybe he becomes part of the Scott Joplin police, even if you play it really, really convincingly. Now, personally, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm playing in an exam, I do not try and play the way that will get me the most points. That is not the point of exams. The point of an exam is for me to enjoy myself, for me to communicate, and for me hopefully to get the whoever's listening to me to enjoy whatever they're listening to. It's not about getting marks. But if that worries you, then just be aware that playing too quickly, someone may take off marks for that. So just a thing to be aware about. Now, one of the things that most people are probably going to ask about is how do you do all these left-hand jumps? ABRSM List C pieces almost always have some kind of rag with giant left-hand jumps about all over the place. Last year's one of my most popular videos ever was, what's it called, Over the Bars or something like that, where there were like crazy left-hand jumps all over the place. Now, this is so much easier, apart from a couple of bars, which may be a little trickier, but I did actually already make a video. There'll be a link in the description below where I do a series of videos specifically in how to do left-hand jumps. You are going to want to go and watch that video because it's going to give you everything that you will ever need to know about how to do these left-hand jumps. One thing that I will say, in some of the meetup groups that I go to, there's a very, very young boy who plays relatively advanced repertoire, and he played the Maple Leaf Rag. I forget how old he is. He's sort of super tiny, young kid. And what I noticed straight away is that he played from memory, and the way that he played was he was always looking at the note that was next. So by the way, I always recommend having the book open in front of you. So when I'm mentioning bar numbers, you can just look straight away at what I'm talking about. So if we look at the left hand of bar 17, he would literally be looking at the opposite note, something like this. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. So in other words, he's always looking for where he's about to put his hand. Now, I was just completely exaggerating that. But when he plays the second quaver in bar 17, as he's about to play that second quaver, he's already looking for the third quaver with his head and his eyes. So it's like this. Already looking there for the next note. Now, in my opinion, that's a bit overkill, but that's what he was doing naturally. You can tell that he hadn't really thought about it. He was just already looking ahead to the next thing because it's just the easiest way to be very, very accurate with what you're doing. Now, if you watch my video on left-hand jumps, you don't have to look a full note in advance, but you do want to glance. You want to glance. So if I play the first quaver, the second quaver, you glance for the third quaver, And the important thing is you do not look at it as you play it. You're already looking for the next thing. What you really do not want to do, you want to notice if you do this and get out of the habit of doing this. Never look physically at the note as you are physically playing it. You never want to look at the note you are actually in the process of playing, because you'll get glued to it, and it will just be like trying to wade through treacle, or what do they call it in another country, molasses or something like that. But it's just very, very unhealthy to do that. So you never want to be looking at the key as you press it down. Now, personally, I think it's very, very achievable to pretty much play the entire piece of music without really needing to look down at your hands at all. I can do all of that without looking at my hands once. Maybe here, maybe in bar 7, yeah, I kind of need to look down a little bit, but all of the jumps, all of the other jumps, you don't really need to look. Apart from bar 57. This is much trickier, and when I performed this piece for the YouTube video, I made sure that I memorized these bars. So, and then here I think it was only in like bar 61 that I brought my eyes back to the page. So that left hand, I do really need to look for those left-hand notes. And other than that, I think it's generally quite achievable to be able to play this without needing to look down once at your hands. And if that's something you can't do yet, then I recommend that you practice in a way, you close your eyes. And again, I explain all this in my YouTube tutorial about left-hand jumps. Part of what I do is just before I play, once I've jumped to a note, I feel, am I in the right place? Once I feel I'm in the right place, I'm like, yep, that's all good. So in other words, I'm not just jumping. I don't just jump and then hit it completely from scratch. It's like I feel my way there and then play it. I'm like I'm blind, and I kind of slightly feeling my way around a little bit. Not too much. I get roughly to where I want to be, and then sort of feel a little bit, am I in the right place? Yep, that's all good. That is if you're reading from the sheet music. If you're not reading from the sheet music, you don't need to feel your way around so much. But and by the way, this piece of music's a little trickier than I expected it to be, because I was like, oh my God, Maple Leaf Rag. I was expecting more or less that I'd just more or less sight read it. And then I was like, oh, it's a little trickier than just sight reading. So yeah, it takes a little bit of sort of more rigorous practice. Do not just practice this piece by just going from the beginning, trying to play the whole thing up to speed, trying to play whole chunks of bars. Split it into like 1 bar chunks. So let's say I'm going from bar 17. You could do like... And this is something that's called chaining. And I did a whole different video about chaining, which might really help you with this. And when I learned this piece of music, it was just basically a lot of chaining so that I could put it together as quickly as possible. What you don't want to do is just play really slowly. Whole chunks of it, and then gradually start to speed all that up, because it'll take you forever. That's just not the efficient way of learning it. What you want to do is just maybe take half bar chunks until that feels easy. Add the next bit. Then chain those together. Until it feels easy, until you're very interoceptive with it. I've spoken so much about interoception in my other videos, so go watch some of my other videos. But when you can play 1 bar and every sensation, you can feel every sensation in your hands, your arm, your body, and you don't have to think about it, you just hear it, you just go. You could do this in your sleep. You can have a conversation as you do it. Then you're ready to chain the next section onto it. So important that. So, yeah, you know, like I was saying, there's not a huge amount of depth and sophistication to this, but I do think that it's important to be aware of the different feelings of the different sections. Now, these are just my suggestions, you know, this is just like how I would go about doing it. You know, I think about what kind of mood does each section convey. So, you know, I'm visualizing, I don't know how many people have seen, you know, Buster Keaton film or a Harold Lloyd film, but I'm imagining some kind of black and white comedy. It's very frothy. People are moving about in sort of that slightly jerky way because it was before film technology got really smooth. But it's basically, it's light-hearted, it's humorous, it's sort of maybe that American New York kind of vibe. And, you know, the darkness that there is, like the darkness, like, it's more like a dark humor. It's not like real darkness, you know, soul darkness. It's just a little bit of drama, sun's gone over. But it's a comedy. This is like a silent comedy. So in your mind's eye, you might want to visualize some kind of, you know, silent movie comedy. And then here, this is much more boisterous. So I use more dabs of pedal just to help with that bass sound. So apologies if it's a bit scratty, but I really use the dabs of pedal and lean into the boisterousness of that left hand. So, I don't know, we're on a building site, we're in a pub, something's going on where things are just a bit more boisterous. You've got a load of big guys pushing each other around in a boisterous, funny way. Laurel and Hardy, the big guy Laurel. So something boisterous, you know. So this bit, relatively light, and so on and so on. Dark, the sun comes out. And then boisterous. You know, and so on and so on. So the end of that section. Back to the beginning. Okay, maybe a bit too much. I hit you over the head with that. But that's all lighter. And then same thing with the trio section. So just before the trio section, so just before bar 49, we've got boisterous. And now it's boisterous. And then maybe this is more feminine, maybe sort of, you know, I'm imagining someone who looks like a flapper in a silent movie, you know, a woman, a delicate looking sort of woman comes along. Boisterous. Here comes the woman again. And so on and so on. Now, it's really important, although you've got these different moods, you need to keep the rhythm relatively stable. So like 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So, you know, I'm keeping the rhythm relatively stable. Quite difficult to say the beats out loud with that bit. So, and then here, bar 57, really boisterous. And that's why I really need to look at my left hand for this, because this is, to me, is like really almost the climax of the whole thing. This is the most boisterous part. I'm going to go from 2 bars before that. So that's bar 55. And then this bit, I think the left hand can be reasonably legato. I don't think we want Something more like... So you can finger pedal that if you like. Hold the whole thing down, or do that and dabs of pedal. So let me go again from the boisterous bit. And so on and so on. So you could even do the whole bar with pedal. As long as you change the pedal every time you change the chord in the right hand. Light. And every time you get to something that feels like an ending, be quite rambunctious with it. Have a little bit of flair and showmanship. So bar 62. So I know we're carrying on. Let me do that again. Now here, I'm bar 65. I believe we can hold it back just a little bit. So we've had this sort of quite big ending. Something very intriguing is happening here, and I think it's okay just to hold the tempo back a little bit. So let me take it again from 57. Where are we? Hold it back. And again, apologies if it's a little scratty, but you get the idea. I just like this like, oh, what's happening here? Let me play the opposite, and then you'll get an idea that it just kind of really doesn't suit it. What I'll try and do, go from bar 57. When we get to the new section, bar 65, I'm going to go faster, and you'll hear it's just not right. Can you tell that if I do the opposite, it's just absolutely not right? So just hold this back a little bit. And in many ways, this is the closest we get to something that's really like a tune. Because in a way, I think that this whole rag could almost be an accompaniment for something else. That's not really a tune, is it? It's not really much of a melody. But here, where we've got in bar 65, suddenly that's like a tune. And that's why I want to slow down and kind of enjoy it a bit. So whoever the female protagonist in these, and then boisterous, whoever this dainty woman is. Here it's like she's got her own song. And I think the left hand is like some of the boisterous men a little bit. It's very whimsical, this bit, and I want to slow down a little and enjoy the whimsy, you know. Important, finish with a flourish. What have we got? So it's up to you how much you want to slow down. You could play this ending without slowing down at all, so... So you notice I really went for it. I don't have to go and do this big snap with my arms. I do it without even thinking about it because I'm used to imagining myself as a performer. That is performing. You know, if I just did this... That's the worst ending ever. No, I just would never want to end a piece of music in that way. So And, you know, I'm going to do a video about this very, very soon, but particularly if you're doing ABRSM online performance exams, you actually get quite a lot of marks from the showmanship of what you're doing. They don't call it that. I forget exactly what they call it, performance something. Performance as a whole. Performance as a whole, the marks that you get for that is things like finishing with, where you immediately want to clap. And that's the thing. You want to play in whatever way makes you think that whoever's listening to you cannot help but just clap. So, you know, if I play... it's through social convention, the way I'm finishing that, you feel you almost have to clap. You just don't have a choice. It's just social convention. It's you know, just the rituals. It's part of the ritual of playing the piano that when you get to the end, you finish with a flourish. So whether you throw your hands up like that, whether you do that, you've got to do something sharp with your arms to say the end. Ta-da, jazz hands. You know, like, don't do jazz hands. Please don't do jazz hands. But it's like the equivalent of something like that. Now, what you could slow down. You could go. And in my opinion, that's a much stronger ending. I personally would slow down like that. It's a really very, very strong ending. So, I think that's really pretty much it. There's just not a lot of stuff to talk about with this piece, but just please, you know, please don't play it the way that they play it in the ABRSM recording. Now, I don't think she plays it that way because she's a bad pianist. I think she plays it that way because this kind of wrist staccato, so, you know, if you take an octave and you're able to do this, really, you can only do that with a wrist staccato. So if you can do this, that's the wrist motion that you kind of want. So you know, it's watch my video on wrist staccato. It's a little tricky at first, but once you get used to it and you can play, it will just make your piece come to life. Now, as I was saying, the reason why I think that woman plays it in this very legato way, which just sounds terrible, is because I think that she's trying to make a recording that is going to be achievable for 99% of people who are taking the exam. And 99% of people, most of those, a huge amount of those are just not going to have wrist staccato, which is, so she's just making it achievable. But please, please, just don't play it that way. If you're going to play the Maple Leaf Rag, take it as a challenge, as an opportunity to lay the foundations for this wrist staccato, which is so vital. You know, hopefully you're taking grade 8, not just to get the qualification and then to go, well, that's it. I've mastered piano. I can never touch it again, you know, because I don't need to touch it again because I've reached the pinnacle. I don't need to do any more. No, you've barely begun with grade 8. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of getting into deeply satisfying advanced pieces, and wrist staccato is one of the most important pieces of technique that you can get. Look at this piece as an opportunity to develop it. To make it light, frothy and bubbly. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you found it useful, please click on like and subscribe and click on the bell icon. If you want to know about future tutorials that are coming up, please feel free to leave comments below whether you agreed with me or disagreed with me about anything, and also let me know if there's other tutorials that you would like to request. I do plan on doing all the grade 8 ones in the book, but if there are also alternative pieces that you would like to see performances of or tutorials about, please do let me know in the comments. Also, I do have some space in my online studio for students. If you're interested in having me as a teacher, do contact me in the link below in the description if you'd like more details about that. So go and do some practice. I'll go watch more of my videos. Take care and goodbye.